but it looks risky.
Oh, it's queen to d8 and the d-pawn runs. Oh my god. What a match. I was like, what is the move that would win there?
It's September 2024 and Magnus Carlsen and Hans Niemann sit down to play chess live in person in Paris, France for the first time in 2 years. Last time they were opposite, Sinkfield Cup. What happened afterwards? Magnus walks away from the tournament, accuses Hans of cheating, implies it, whatever. Hans sues him, blah, blah, blah. Huge history, huge scandal, right? So this was a huge match, hotly anticipated, and games like this are why it did not disappoint. Hans had white, Magnus black, clock times on the left, 5 minutes plus 1 second to move, so it's online chess but in person, tension in the room. We're about to dive in, but just before we do, I need to talk about this little bad boy, the Magic Mind Productivity Shot. Yes, they are sponsoring this video, and yes, they are sponsoring the next 10 days, but hear me out, because I'm going to be taking one of these every day. If that didn't come into focus, I'll show a picture of it, and it's not just for your productivity, right? This whole thing is part of a whole bigger mental wealth picture, and that's what I really love about these guys. I don't just work with anyone, right? So yes, they want you to buy this shot. They want you to have it and enjoy the benefits of it each day, but it's part of a much bigger picture. The 5 pillars of good mental wealth, which is like building that wealth bank to then protect you if a mental health crisis comes along, and they are the good ones, right? Sleep, diet, exercise, plus reducing stress and what they call exogenous compounds. So don't put bad stuff in your body like excess alcohol. Do put good stuff in your body like this. Anyway, enough rambling. You know the good stuff. The link's in the description. You'll get a great discount. So if you want to go on this mental wealth journey with me, have a look at it, have a click, think about purchasing this to give you that boost every single day. Without further ado, I'm going to actually drink this thing. It's a small shot. I've not had it before. Let's see how it tastes. It's actually not bad. It's quite kind of fruity, but there's a matcha ingredient in it as well. I mean, there's tons of ingredients. Have a look at them. It's a tiny shot, like 2 fluid ounces. It's not bad, actually. You can tell there's tons and tons of like good stuff in it. You know when you can just tell something's got goodness in it. Matcha tea. It's light on the caffeine, not super heavy, so you still have it alongside your coffee, your tea, etc. Right, let's go. I'm going to be bouncing off the walls in this game now with the review. Let's dive in. Hands with white, and he kicks off with pawn to e4. Magnus goes e5, super solid. The knights develop, and we get bishop c4, the Gucci Reza piano, named after the king of fashion himself. And after bishop c5, d3, knight f6, Hans goes for the c-pawn advance. He wants to set up that big center. Magnus now goes for pawn to d6, castles h6. Now we get Chewy's favourite move, the Wookiee one, and after a6, giving the bishop some room, knight bd2, castles. Now Hans goes on the pony manoeuvre, very standard stuff. Magnus tucks back with the sniper here, and h3, both kings with some Lufthansa, plus taking control of g4 and g5, and the oft overlooked i4 and i5. Great stuff from both players. Rook e8 now played, and these are some of the more common moves for white, right? Does Hans do any of them? No, he plays this weird bishop d2 move. Now, if you go knight a5, there's some fascinating lines here, you know, going after the bishop. You can come to d5, but then c6, but then you sack, but then hang on, this knight's open when you go c4, and it's got no retreat, if you can visualize all that. But none of it played. Instead, we get bishop e6. And again, we see some of the points of the bishop on d2, because Hans captures here. Sorry, I've got like fluid in my mouth from drinking. Rook takes back, and now we get pawn to c4. It's an explosive move in itself, sets up the camel toe pawn formation, which we absolutely love. and it breathes life into this bishop. You know, the eyes have been opened, but you give a massive hole. So it's a really fascinating battle now as Magnus plonks a knight in the center here. Dark squares versus light squares. We get knight g3 played, and b5 is a great move, just nibbling away at this structure. You know, do you want to take, leave a backwards d pawn? Do you not want to, as Hans does? He just improves the bishop and allow this. Black opens the B file. Not a bad way to go though. Really fascinating positional battle. Magnus now takes on f3 simply. Queen recaptures and he rotates this horsey and sets up a threat. You know, the bishop's already on f2. Imagine rook f6. It all converges. So we see knight f5 played, fighting against that. Rook f6 anyway, so the queen gets out of dodge, and now king h7 protects h6, prepares g6 to kick the knight, but no issues here with the captures. So rook a d1, good centralizing move. a5 from Magnus sets up a small tactic. Take my a pawn, I take on f2 with check, open the eyes of the rook. So instead we see king h1, stepping out of the way of those plans. Now g6, the knight stumbles back. Rook e6, more micro improvement, opens the eyes of the queen. Who knows if f5 is coming one day? Doesn't look good at all, but possible, right? And now after rook f1, Magnus has to start thinking about Hans's breaks. So he plays this really fascinating positional decision. This is an absolute monster, but what does he do? He just straight gives it up for the knight. Now it was a good knight as well. It was looking at some key squares. But once you do this, you can then follow up with pawn g5. I mean, the depth of Magnus's positional understanding is just awesome to watch. Big dark squared grip now, despite the squares you've given away, but white doesn't have a knight or a light squared bishop. So we now see pawn b3 and c5 continues with the theme here. Look at Magnus's pony now, knight d4 coming to a cinema near you soon. So we see rook d2 preparing to stack. Magnus whispers, do you even rook lift? Pours some sugar on the backwards pawn. g3 is played, and now this is nice. Don't do this too soon. If you get a bit trigger happy, white can take here. If captures, then you've dropped a queen, you're a pawn down. Therefore, queen e7 first. Now we see king g2, and the knight rotates. Excellent horseplay from Magnus. This is what he visualizes on weekends at the training camps, and Hans plays this fascinating rook d5 move. He could actually break with f4, by the way. Excuse me. Really interesting way to play, because although this gets weak, the queen can actually start landing some checks on f5 against the king. Different game. Hans does this though, allowing the rook now to be trapped after knight d4, but this is what he's foreseen. We get queen d3, and once this one comes off the board, this rook's going to come to life. Now the all-powerful engine actually wants to step back, hold on to the knight for a minute, but Magnus doesn't do it. He drops back with the rook, you know, getting out of the way of the queen's gaze here. Now we see takes. Don't take back with this pawn. This can march, but with a check. So this pawn takes, and now suddenly this one comes to life and could be supporting c5 soon. So rook c1, first played on the board. King g7 from Magnus. More great prophylactic chess, reminiscent of this guy, former world champion Anatoly Karpov, now enjoys a dip in the frozen Russian winter lakes, playing a spot of chess. What a player he was. And after a3 from Hans, looking for some b4 action, Magnus shuts it down with queen to b7. We see rook b1 covering the pawn, rook f6, micro improvement, eyeballing here, and now I love this. We get queen e2, followed by queen c6, and it's like this synchronized dance of the swimming queens just gets better. Rook b2, rook a7. The synchronization of the pieces is beautiful. Both players love a dip, excellent swimmers, real good abs, and now we see queen d3 followed by rook a8. It's nervous, it's tense, a waiting game. Rook c2 from Hans, and actually here it's Magnus who cracks and plays a bad move. He should wait with rook a7, because then I'll show this line. If you go pawn c5 breaking, there's rook c7, critical move. You create this pin down here. And if white goes b4, trying to steamroll, then you can take and queen a4, critical resource, still keeping the pressure, hitting the pawn. You know, black holds on, but you really have to tread carefully. Magnus does not, goes queen b7, and it's bad because Hans can now immediately push forward with the c pawn, but he doesn't do it. He first does a different move, which is strong but not as good. And why is this so dodgy? We'll say you take, now the rook recaptures, and look at the power here. You know, things are collapsing, especially the e pawn, then the d pawn's weak, and the king starts looking really drafty. It's not good. However, Hans plays rook b5, hits the queen, but now it can save itself, and when c5 comes, black's got a resource that wasn't available before, pawn d5, and it's a great fight back shot. If you capture, then you take with check, and not only can you now blockade the c pawn, but there's also some issues with the white king. If you don't capture, rook b6 played in the game by Hans, then things get sharp in a different way because Magnus doesn't move the queen yet. He takes on e4, and if you take here, you've got some problems because not only does black take the queen, but also on the rook. You know, black's doing great. You know, if you were to take there, then you could be making a queen, etc. So the queen does have to move, comes to c4, Magnus gives ground, and now after takes, king takes, Hans centralizes. The game is level, standing on a knife edge. Really fascinating. White has the dangerous attack. Pass pawn. This one's under fire. Can't activate the queen or the rook drops. So what does Magnus do? He plays the excellent pawn d3, reminding Hans that he has a pass pawn too, and Hans Niemann makes a critical mistake here. What should he do? Rook c1, you know, top move, or rook d2, something like that. But you have to stay in front of this pawn or around the pawn in the right way. He, however, lifts with rook c4, but now Magnus has a critical, excellent resource at his disposal. He finds it with queen to d8. What a move that is, because white is in big trouble. If you try and move the queen somewhere, which Hans does in fact, the pawn runs. If you take, rook's taking back, pawn is running. So this is how the game proceeded, but now d2. It's only one square away, and we see the problem with the rook. It's just not able to get back in time. If it was here, you could blockade, and then white's actually rounding up the pawn and doing quite well.
But it looks risky.
Oh, it's queen to d8, and the d pawn runs. Oh my God. What a match. I was like, what is the move that would win there?
As it is in the game though, you have to check from here. The king drops back, meekly cover with the queen, but now black centralizes like a black widow spider, right? Sprawling in every direction. The king goes and a4 undermines the rook. It's absolutely terminal. Hans now drops back with his one, and Magnus plays a good move, but not the best. Best was rook d8, keeping the d pawn alive, but instead he takes here, also really natural, but now this really dangerous d pawn does drop off the board. Queen c4 played, queen a1 technically the best defense, but so difficult to find on absolute seconds. Niemann down to about one now, one or two. He plays rook d7 going for the counterplay, but it allows Magnus to go pawn b2. Best move, winning move. You know, you set up things like queen c1. However, missed. He plays the natural, rook takes on a3, but amazingly, white has a move here which is almost drawing, you know, borderline, rook b7, and black is a bit paralyzed. You can't advance the pawn or it's taken, you can't move the rook or the pawn drops, you can't move the queen or the pawn drops, and you could enter an endgame like this, black a pawn ahead, but is that winning? Well, who knows? Not going to be easy. If so, probably theoretical draws are on the cards. However, Niemann misses it, low on time. He plays this rook d6 move, and after b2, now Magnus is just a step away from queening and threatening this queen c1 monster invasion. Also, he's opened the eyes of the rook, and Niemann, with no time on the clock, blitzes queen f3, and of course it's just terminal. He's looking for this check down here, hit the black king, but when the pawn moved, of course Magnus opened this one, and he can now kill that queen. This is how the game proceeded and ended on the spot. We see resignation, and Magnus not only took home this game, but the entire tournament itself, or the, well, tournament and the match. Now, don't forget, link in the description. Check out that Magic Mind productivity shot. You're gonna love it. Hope to see you again on a future video. And if you want another epic game of chess, check out the video on screen. Cheers.